Clara Bennett had never meant to send that message. It was supposed to go to someone else, someone who had left a long time ago. But one trembling thumb and a misaligned contact name changed everything. Her phone screen glowed faintly in the office light. The words stared back at her like a confession. "Daddy, please come back." It was meant for her estranged father, whom she hadn't spoken to in nearly 12 years. But in her exhaustion, her phone had autofilled Dominic Hawthorne, her boss, the billionaire CEO of Hawthorne Enterprises, and a man she barely dared to speak to beyond quarterly reports and polite greetings. Her heart froze. The blood drained from her face. "Oh my God," she whispered, fingers hovering over the screen. She tried to delete the message, too late. The status flicked to delivered. She could practically feel the ground tilt beneath her feet. Dominic Hawthorne wasn't just any boss. He was the kind of man who ruled boardrooms with icy precision. He didn't make jokes, didn't forgive errors, didn't feel, at least not in any visible way. And now, she'd sent him that text. A plea, a mistake, a disaster. Clara buried her face in her hands. Around her, the open concept office buzzed quietly, analysts tapping keyboards, assistants whispering, printers humming. The world went on as if nothing had happened, while her own world cracked open. Minutes passed. Then her phone buzzed. "Dominic Hawthorne, explain." One word, cold, commanding. Her throat tightened. She typed back quickly, fingers trembling. "Clara, I'm so sorry. That message wasn't meant for you. It was a mistake. Please ignore it." She hit send and prayed he would. But deep down, she knew Dominic wasn't the kind of man who ignored things. Especially not emotional ones. An hour later, her desk phone rang. "Miss Bennett," said the crisp voice of Dominic's assistant, Marisol. "Mr. Hawthorne would like to see you in his office. Now." Clara's heart dropped. She grabbed her notebook and walked down the glass hallway, her reflection ghosting beside her in the mirrored walls. The elevator ride up felt endless. Dominic's office occupied the top floor, an entire penthouse of glass, steel, and shadowed silence. He stood by the window when she entered, the skyline of New York City burning gold behind him. He didn't turn immediately, just said, "Close the door." She obeyed. When he finally turned, his gray eyes were sharp, unreadable. "So," he began, voice low and deliberate, "you sent me a message that said, 'Daddy, please come back.'" Clara swallowed hard. "Yes, sir. That was an accident." He studied her face for a long moment, as if he could peel away the lie. "An accident? Yes. I was trying to text my father." She hesitated, forcing herself to continue. "We've been estranged for years. I typed too quickly. I didn't notice it went to you." Dominic's jaw flexed. "You expect me to believe that?" "Yes, sir." Her voice cracked slightly. "I'm truly sorry." He turned back toward the window. "You should be more careful. I don't appreciate personal drama crossing professional lines." "Yes, Mr. Hawthorne." Her voice was small, but steady. He turned then, just enough to glance at her. "That will be all." She nodded and left the office, cheeks burning. But that night, something unexpected happened. Dominic sat in his penthouse, staring at the city below, the message still open on his phone. "Daddy, please come back." The words echoed in his mind, unsettling him in ways he didn't understand. He was supposed to be happy. His wedding was in 2 weeks, a grand event uniting his empire with another. His fiancée, Madeline Sinclair, was beautiful, poised, and perfect on paper. Their union was strategic, elegant, and entirely loveless. He poured himself a drink. The amber liquid caught the light as he muttered, "Why does that message bother me?" Because it sounded real, raw, vulnerable, human, something he hadn't felt in years. The next morning, Clara tried to fade into the background. She buried herself in reports, kept her eyes down, her heart still hammering from the embarrassment. She told herself it would blow over. But it didn't. By noon, Marisol appeared again. "Mr. Hawthorne would like to see you." Clara's stomach knotted. "Did I do something wrong?" Marisol just gave her a knowing look. "You'll find out." When she entered the office, Dominic was sitting at his desk this time, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, rare for him. His eyes lifted to hers. "Miss Bennett, sit." She obeyed, every nerve alive. He leaned back slightly, studying her. "I looked into your file." Her heart stuttered. "My file? I make it a habit to know my employees," he said smoothly. "You were raised in upstate New York. Scholarship student, valedictorian, Father left when you were 16. Clara froze. You investigated me. I confirmed facts, he said simply. I don't like uncertainty. She clenched her hands in her lap. Sir, I didn't mean to drag you into anything personal. Perhaps not, he said quietly, but you did. He leaned forward, elbows on the desk. Tell me something. Why would you text a man who left you after all these years? She blinked. The question cut deeper than expected. Because some part of me still wants to believe people can change, she whispered. Even if they don't deserve the chance. For a long moment, Dominic said nothing. Then he stood abruptly, pacing toward the window again. You're naive, he said, but his tone lacked its usual bite. People don't change, they reveal. She looked up at him, trembling but defiant. Then maybe you've been looking at the wrong people. That made him pause. For a heartbeat, something flickered across his face, surprise, maybe admiration. Finally, he said, you may go. Clara rose slowly. Yes, Mr. Hawthorne. But just before she reached the door, he said quietly, and Clara, don't apologize for feeling. She turned, startled, but his eyes were already back on his screen. Days passed. Dominic found himself distracted, rereading Clara's reports, noticing the way she bit her lip when thinking, how her laugh briefly escaped during coffee breaks. She wasn't like the people who surrounded him. There was something painfully genuine about her. He hated it, because it made him feel again. He started finding excuses to speak with her, reviewing projects, asking for her opinion. At first, Clara was wary. But slowly, their conversations deepened. He asked about her art degree she never finished, her dream to start a small gallery someday. He even smiled once, a small, fleeting thing that shocked her. Rumors started swirling in the company. The billionaire boss who never smiled now lingered too long near one of his employees. But neither of them spoke of it. Still, Clara noticed something changing in Dominic too. The icy facade cracked. His wedding meetings were postponed. His fiancée called, furious, but he avoided her. Then, one evening, she found him alone in the boardroom, staring at a ring on the table. His fiancée's ring. Mr. Hawthorne, she asked softly. He didn't look up. I cancelled the wedding. Clara froze. What? He finally looked at her. Because of a mistake. Her pulse raced. Because of me. His lips curved faintly. Because of the message. She blinked, confused. You reminded me, he said quietly, that somewhere beneath all this power and pretense, I still wanted to be needed. Wanted to be someone's reason to stay. Clara's eyes stung. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I know, he said. But it did. They stood there in silence, the city lights flickering beyond the glass. I don't want a marriage of contracts and shareholders, he said finally. I want something real. Her voice trembled. And what do you want from me? He took a step closer. Truth. Nothing else. She felt her heart catch. For once, there was no command in his voice, only vulnerability. Then here's the truth, she whispered. I don't want to be another mistake you correct. I just want to matter for who I am. His gaze softened. He reached out, brushing a tear from her cheek. You already do. The following week, the tabloids exploded. Billionaire Dominic Hawthorne cancels lavish wedding, bride left, shocked. Speculation ran wild, but Dominic issued only one statement. Greater than, sometimes, the heart needs to make its own decisions, free of expectation or agenda. Inside the company, whispers turned into silence. Nobody dared mention the assistant who had somehow changed the course of his life. But at night, when the city quieted, Dominic and Clara met in the office they once feared. They talked, really talked, about pain, about parents who left, about the hollow ache of success without love. One evening, he said, you know, I used to think emotions made me weak. She smiled faintly. Maybe they're what make you human. He chuckled softly. And that message of yours, it ruined everything. Her eyes widened, worried. He leaned in. But maybe it saved me too. Months later, they stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The air was crisp, full of possibility. Dominic wrapped his coat around her shoulders. You ever regret sending that text? He asked. Clara laughed softly. Every day, and not at all. He tilted his head. Explain. She smiled, eyes shining. Because it was the worst mistake I ever made, that turned into the best thing that ever happened to me. Dominic's gaze held hers for a long, quiet moment. Then he whispered, to think, a single message could change two lives. She leaned against him, whispering back, maybe the universe just hit send for me. And as the city glowed beneath them, the man who once built empires on power finally learned what it meant to build something far greater, a life shaped not by control, but by connection. All because one trembling hand sent the wrong message, and a broken heart decided to listen. Clara Bennett was the kind of employee who never stood out, quiet, punctual, dependable, and invisible. She liked it that way. At Hawthorne Enterprises, anonymity was safety. Her boss, Dominic Hawthorne, was a man both admired and feared, a billionaire with cold gray eyes and an engagement splashed across every business magazine. He was due to marry Madeline Sinclair, socialite and heiress, in less than a month. The wedding was supposed to unite two empires. Clara had no part in that world. Her job was to proofread financial statements and keep her head down. But one evening, after another long day, Clara sat in her small apartment, scrolling through old contacts on her phone. Her eyes blurred with unshed tears as she hovered over one name, Dad. She hadn't spoken to him since he walked out when she was 16. For weeks, she had debated reaching out. That night, loneliness finally won. She typed the words that had lived in her heart for years. Greater than, Daddy, please come back. She stared at the message for a moment before pressing send, a desperate, trembling act of hope. Seconds later, her phone buzzed with confirmation. Then she froze. Her stomach dropped. The name beside the message wasn't Dad. It was Dominic Hawthorne. No, 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 she whispered, fumbling to delete it. But the screen already, read, delivered. Her entire body went cold. Her boss, her billionaire, intimidating, emotionally impenetrable boss, had just received the most personal, humiliating message of her life. She squeezed her eyes shut, whispering prayers into the empty room. Then, a new notification appeared. Greater than Dominic Hawthorne, explain. Just one word, sharp and commanding. Clara's breath came fast. Her thumbs flew over the keyboard. Greater than, I'm so sorry, Mr. Hawthorne. That message wasn't meant for you. It was an accident. Please ignore it. She set the phone down and stared at it, her pulse hammering in her ears. Hours passed without a reply. The silence was worse than any response could have been. The next morning, Clara tried to pretend nothing had happened. She walked into the glass tower of Hawthorne Enterprises, clutching her coffee like a shield. Her colleagues greeted her with polite smiles. No one knew her secret, yet. At 10:12 a.m., her desk phone rang. Miss Bennett, said the smooth voice of Marisol, Dominic's assistant. Mr. Hawthorne would like to see you. Now, her blood ran cold. She walked the long corridor to the top floor, each step echoing in the marble hallway. When she entered his office, the view of Manhattan stretched behind him, the city glittering beneath a gray sky. He stood at the window, back to her. Close the door. She obeyed, her hands trembling. He turned slowly. His expression was unreadable. So, he said softly, you sent me a message last night. Yes, sir, she whispered. It was a mistake. His eyes studied her face. Who was it meant for? My father, she said, voice cracking. We haven't spoken in years. I pressed the wrong name. Silence stretched. Dominic leaned against his desk, arms crossed. I see. Clara waited, barely breathing. Then he said, you know, Miss Bennett, I'm not in the habit of forgiving carelessness. I understand. But, he continued, there was something about that message that didn't feel careless. She blinked, confused. Sir. He pushed off the desk and walked toward her. It sounded honest, and honesty is rare in my world. Clara's breath hitched. I didn't mean for you to see it. Perhaps, he said, but I did. He studied her for a long moment, then said quietly, you may go. She turned to leave. Miss Bennett, she stopped. Your father, Dominic said, if he ever does come back, make sure he deserves it. Clara nodded quickly, eyes stinging, and hurried out before the tears fell. That night, Dominic sat alone in his penthouse, staring at his phone. The message still glowed on the screen, Daddy please come back. He should have deleted it, but something about it haunted him, maybe because he understood the ache behind those words. His own father had died when he was 19, leaving him a fortune but no affection. Since then, he'd buried every trace of vulnerability beneath control and ambition. Madeline, his fiancée, called to confirm wedding details. He answered mechanically, gave short replies, and hung up early. When he looked out across the city, he realized how hollow his empire felt. All because one small, mistaken text had cracked something open inside him. Part 2, The Cancelled Wedding. By the next week, the whole company could feel it. Dominic Hawthorne was different. He no longer barked orders. He smiled, faintly, but unmistakably, when Clara entered a room. He lingered in conversations that had nothing to do with profit margins. Clara noticed it too, though she tried to ignore it. She told herself it was just coincidence, but her pulse always betrayed her. Then, one afternoon, Marisol appeared at her desk again. Mr. Hawthorne would like a word. Clara's stomach dropped, but she followed. Obediently. When she stepped into his office, Dominic was seated, a file open before him. He gestured for her to sit. I've been reviewing your work, he said. You're thorough, detail-oriented. You don't seek attention. Thank you, sir. He closed the file. Why do you stay here? You could do more. Clara hesitated. Because stability matters to me. After my father left, I promised myself I'd never depend on anyone again. Dominic studied her, then said quietly, dependence isn't weakness. I disagree, she whispered. His eyes softened, just for a second. Then maybe you've never had someone who didn't leave. Her heart twisted. She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, his phone buzzed. A message flashed across the screen. Madeline Sinclair, we need to finalize the venue. He sighed, silenced it, and stood. The wedding, he said dryly, is becoming a negotiation rather than a celebration. Clara tried to smile. That's common in business marriages, isn't it? He gave her a long look. You think that's all it is? She didn't answer. That night, Dominic didn't go home. He sat in his office long after everyone left, replaying every word Clara had said. By dawn, his decision was made. The next morning, the news hit every major outlet. Dominic Hawthorne calls off wedding to Madeline Sinclair. Clara saw the headline on her phone and nearly dropped it. By noon, whispers filled the office. Theories flew, infidelity, scandal, power plays, but none of them were true. Only Clara knew the truth, or part of it. That afternoon, she was summoned again. Dominic stood by the window as usual, but this time he looked lighter. I suppose you've heard, he said. Yes, sir. I ended it. She hesitated. May I ask why? He turned, meeting her gaze. Because I finally realized what I was missing. She swallowed. And what's that? Something real, he said simply. Something that isn't built on business or convenience. Her pulse quickened. Mr. Hawthorne. Dominic, he corrected softly. She froze. No one called him that. He took a step closer. You made me remember that there's more to life than contracts and headlines. One message, one mistake, did what years of wealth couldn't. Her voice trembled. You can't mean. I do, he said. I canceled the wedding because I couldn't stand to marry someone I didn't love. Clara's eyes filled with tears. But you don't even know me. I know enough, he said. I know you mean what you say. And that's rarer than gold in my world. Silence stretched between them, electric and fragile. Dominic, she whispered, I never wanted to ruin your life. He smiled faintly. You didn't ruin it, Clara. You saved it. Then, in the soft hush of the office, he reached for her hand, tentative, unsure, human. Outside, flashes from reporters, cameras lit the street below. The world was already dissecting his decision. But inside that glass tower, it didn't matter. For the first time in years, Dominic felt free. And Clara, the woman who had once texted him by mistake, realized that sometimes the wrong message could reach exactly the right person. Months later, they stood on the balcony of his penthouse, watching the city shimmer. The tabloids still speculated, but neither cared. Do you ever think about it? He asked quietly. That message, Clara smiled. Every day. He tilted his head. Regret it? She shook her head. Not anymore. Maybe the universe just redirected it. He laughed softly, the sound of a man who had finally learned to feel. And under the vast sky, with the city lights stretching endlessly below, the billionaire who once built walls around his heart finally let one fall, all because a single text reached the wrong number, and two lonely souls learned that some mistakes are meant to happen.